Well, you all know that if you've been here before that I left my glasses down there. Now they're going to be upset because I'm going to step down out of the view of the camera. Sorry, camera folks. I got my glasses now. It's necessary. So the four agreements. So I've been talking about the four agreements. The Toltec book of wisdom, right? Teaching us a way of living. And the four agreements that we've covered over the last 4 weeks, of course, are be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And I said, those are all great, and we can see those as memes on Facebook. We can see people say, oh, heart, 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 love, 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 all this stuff. But here's the bottom line. Unless we're living these things, it's not making a hill of beans of difference. So being impeccable with your word means to not use your words to spread poison, to not use your words to spread poison against someone else or against yourself. Because here's the thing, that spreading of poison spreads all right here, whether it is toward yourself or it is toward someone else. So the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. Impeccable. Peccatus meaning sin, and im meaning without sin. To be without sin toward yourself and others by not spewing anything that you can think of that's poisonous. It doesn't matter what the other person said, by the way. It's you who can be impeccable with your word. The second week we talked about don't take anything personally. One of my all-time favorites. Because what it means is that nothing anybody ever does is because of you. Nothing anybody ever does or says is because of you. And that's hard to understand right out of the gate, but it's true. The reason people do and say things is because of the agreements that they've made in their life. It's because of their story, because of how they've grown up. It's because of fill in the blank. It's the same for you. Anything you do and say has nothing to do with the other person. It's true. So don't take anything personally. Stop. Begin to trust your own self is what this agreement is really about. Don't trust anything but what you go inside to determine. All right? Don't take anything personally. The third agreement is don't make any assumptions. And we make a whole lot of them, a lot of times. And some assumptions are really okay to make. We make an assumption every time we get in a vehicle that somebody else is going to stay in their lane, stop at a red light, those sorts of things. Use their turn signal. Oh, no, not that one. We make those assumptions, and that's okay. But I'm talking about making assumptions about other people, what's in their head, assuming what they think, assuming what they need. And what we're talking about here is, hey, how about asking a question? We have to be brave enough to ask a question. All right? Don't make assumptions about other people. Don't make assumptions of what they need or what they do or what they think. All right? Last week I talked about always do your best. And what this means, really, the bottom line, the nitty-gritty of it, and what makes it one of the most difficult agreements to live, is that everything you do, every choice you make, you should love what you're doing. Love it. Love what you're doing. And if you're not loving what you're doing, you cannot possibly do your best. If you're doing that because you think you have an obligation to do it, what is that? Is that me?
Yeah, I think it's you.
Yeah. I'm just really... So, always do your best. That really was the best thing to do. So, we've got to love what we're doing, because we can't do our best unless we love what we're doing. So that means we have to say yes when we mean yes and no when we mean no. And to be perfectly satisfied with either answer. But we have to do our best because of the deep reasons for it. I gave a sample last week about going to a funeral, and I was like, I don't really want to go to a funeral. Who wants to go to a funeral? But the more I thought about it, yes, I want to go there. I want to honor that person's life. I was just being lazy. I was just not being true to who I really want to be. All right? So we have to make those decisions consciously. We have to make them consciously. Well, why does all this even matter? Sometimes I think people say, well, what in the world, and why does it matter? Why do any of those ideas matter? Well, listen, here's why it matters. It only matters if you want to lead a life that is from a deep sense of joy. It only matters if you want to live a life of freedom and peace. It only matters if you want those sorts of things. See? That's the key. You have to want those sorts of things. You have to be willing to live these things and not just leave them on a piece of paper. The greatest teaching, or one of the greatest teachings I know about that, comes out of Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 through 27. It's this metaphor. We have to be willing not to be dissuaded by the successes of the universe. We have to be willing to want something more. Here's what Jesus says about that. From the Message Bible, he says, "These words I speak to you," in other words, these agreements, because he's not just talking about his words. He's talking about any word that spouts from love, that springs from love. Any teaching that springs from love. He says, "These words I speak to you are not incidental additions to your life." Kind of like homeowner improvements to your standard of living. No, they are foundational words. They are words to build a life on. If you work these words into your life, you are like a smart carpenter who builds his house on a solid rock. Rain poured down, the river flooded, the tornado hit, but nothing moved that house. It was fixed to the rock. But if you just use my words in the Bible studies, in other words, if you just let Don Miguel Ruiz's word lie on the page and don't work them into your life, you are like a stupid carpenter who built his house on the sandy beach. When a storm rolled in and the waves came up, it collapsed like a house of cards. That's interpretation called the Message Bible from Matthew chapter 7, verse 24 through 27. See, it's the same with all these words. We've got to be willing to live these words, not just keep them on the paper. That's how we build this foundation. That's how we build this foundation that when things start happening out here in the world, we don't have to worry about it. We go back to the foundation that's in us. You see, that's what Jesus is talking about. That's where you find that. That's where you find freedom in the way Miguel talks about it. Because that's what we're building. We're building that foundation from which we can live as a free person, as a free human being, as a free spiritual being. But that doesn't happen all the time, does it? And here's what Miguel says. He says, you know why it doesn't happen is because we lose control of our emotions. And when we lose control of our emotions, we give up. We give away our freedom and we give away our peace. That's what happens. We give away that. You know what happens when we get out of control? We get out of control with our emotions. Our emotion eats us up so much, and everything that comes out of our mouth is crazy. All our actions are crazy. They're not in keeping with who we want to be. What we think over and over again in our minds, they eat us up. We get out of control. Out of control means agitated, uneasy, not making sense. We get that way. All you have to do, we're not just talking about other people here. What we're talking about is me when I can't fall asleep and I'm rolling that same thing over and over in my mind. Didn't sleep a bit. Going over and over. That's letting our emotions take control of us. We let our mind just run. Miguel says there's a reason for this. And the reason is that we have a disease. And the disease is fear. The disease is fear. It's what puts us in dis-ease. It's what puts us out of ease. That's what he calls it. And the symptoms of this disease are our emotions. They're anger, hatred, distrust, feelings of revenge, guilt. All those things are the symptoms of our own fears. That's the root of those negative emotions, those emotions that eat us up, where we feel out of control. That's what it is. It's because those emotions are the symptoms of our fear. We are out of ease. And when we are out of ease, we can't do this at all. We take things personally. We make assumptions. We can't do our best. And what comes out of our mouth? Sometimes we're ashamed of it later on, aren't we? And that's what happens when our emotions are out of control. When we come from fear. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking that, fear has never solved a single problem in the universe. The emotions that come out of fear has never contributed to our freedom one bit. I think you might agree. The hatred that comes out of white supremacists comes out of the fear of not being in control and losing something they think they have. The hate that comes out of liberal leftists comes from the fear of losing some sort of democracy that they have built in their minds. That's the truth. It comes out of fear. It comes out of fear. The greed of corporations and corrupt government officials comes out of the fear of not having enough for me. And the rage and distrust we feel for others comes out of our fear of being left behind or losing something that we value. Do you see how that works? It's both sides of the coin, by the way. It's easy to say they, but it's us who have these emotions and that are rooted in fear. It's our disease. It's how we are out of ease. Well, you've heard me say before that the only way to solve problems is not through fear, but through love. That's how we do it. We don't do it by coming up against hate with hate or distrust with distrust. We come up against it with love. And so our first step is to be aware of when our emotions take us out of control. Because when our emotions take us out of control, it's a signal to us. It's a signal to us that we have forgiveness work to do. That's what it's a signal of. It's not a signal to set things right and make things better and go out and march and do. It might be that, but the first clue is that we have some forgiveness work to do. That's what awareness does. Awareness of being out of control with our emotions signals us that there's forgiveness work to do. Because here's the idea. The idea is not to get rid of our emotions. The idea is to express them in the right time, in the right way, for the good of myself and others as well. You see that? It's not to become automatons or not to care about what's going on in the world and in my life. It's simply to express that emotion in a way that is useful and in keeping with who and what I want to be, that springs from love and not something less than that. That's how we want to do it. We want to express in that way. And the way to do that, in that awareness, is to practice forgiveness. Now you're saying, whoa, how in the world does that work? Well, listen, forgiveness is a foundational practice. Forgiveness is a foundational practice. And I'm going to project on all of you that there's no one here who doesn't have some work to do around forgiveness, myself especially included. Let me read this to you. If we can see that our state of mind is a disease, in other words, we are in dis-ease, we are in fear, really at the root of these emotions that take us out of control, the root is fear. If we can see that it's a disease, we find that there is a cure. We don't have to suffer any longer. First, we need the truth to open the emotional wounds, take the poison out, and heal the wounds completely. How do we do this? We must forgive those we feel have wronged us. Not because they deserve to be forgiven, but because we love ourselves so much that we don't want to keep paying for the injustice. Because people want to say that about forgiveness. They think, oh, if I forgive them, I'm letting them off the hook. No, grasshopper. That is not how it works. It's that I don't want to keep paying for that injustice. Forgiveness is the only way to heal. Forgiveness is the key. You see, unforgiveness keeps us tethered. It keeps us tethered to that thing. It keeps us right there. We can't get away from it. You see how that happens? Just think about that in the unforgiveness you're holding. He stays tethered to that. Why do we want to give away our power like that? Why do we want to give away our health and our freedom and our peace? Why do we want to do that? Anybody who says, I could never forgive that, tethers themselves to that exactly. puts themselves in a jail cell, closes the door, and tosses the key far away. That's what you do when you say you'll never forgive. I would never forgive that. Well, that's where you'll stay, right in that cell. So what is that? Is that you? Is there something you're holding? Is there something that you've decided that that's where you are with it? Why do you choose to give your freedom away? Why do I choose to give my freedom away? Forgiveness is really the power that unlocks love. It's how we unlock love. I don't need to say a whole lot more about forgiveness. You either decide to forgive because it's in your own best interest to be all that you've come here to be, to come from love, or you don't. And if you don't, you should admit to yourself that you've chosen to be tethered to exactly that. So this is a crazy world, I know. There's all sorts of stuff out here that distracts us and gets our attention. But these 4 agreements are a way for us to walk in life with freedom and ease. You either use them or you don't use them. It's up to you. You either decide to be impeccable with your word, to don't make assumptions, to don't take things personally, to always do your best, and you decide a critical practice is the practice of forgiveness. Not for the other person, not for the institution, not for the corporation, but for yourself. And with that clarity, you will do more important work in this world than you can ever imagine. Because you will not be carrying those out of control emotions that take you simply out of control. So let's take that idea into meditation today. And let's realize that the forgiveness work that I do for me. I do that to release. I do that to free myself, to untether myself from exactly what I don't want in the first place. So take a deep breath in and then out. And know this, my friends, know this, that this work you do, this work that seems difficult, this forgiveness work, you do not have to do alone. Simply open your heart. Settle into a place of ease. Know that the God of your being resides in you, as you, to calm you, to soothe your fear or anxiety, to be the foundation of love for which you can depend. Breathing in and out, to be willing to unlock that door, to come out of that cell, to see the light, to be free. aren't building something small. We are building a palace of peace within our hearts. It takes determination and effort to complete something of such beauty